Yeah. Miracles come while we in the fight. Don't give up and hold him tight. You will have a visible battle scar, but never forget who you are and fight, fight, fight.
Hello, and welcome to Embracing the Fight. I am Erica Lamar, your digital creator and host. And I just appreciate all of you for watching me every week. This is my 46th episode. So that's one episode for every year of life that I've had the pleasure of having. Even though my birthday was in September, this is the 46th episode, the 46th year of my life. So this episode is extremely special to me. However, before we get into that, I need to ask you to go on YouTube, click like, click share, comment, and let me know, how these messages are actually reaching you, if they're touching you or not. And please, please, please share with your friends. I want this to grow organically so the conversations can be had concerning physical and mental health issues and concerns. Because today's episode, like I said, it was really, really, really amazing for me to be able to find, someone like this. Because I'll admit, as of late, I have been struggling, a little bit within myself. And I was asking God, like, really, where are you in certain parts of my life? And I kept hearing in my head, do you believe in miracles? And I asked him to show me. And after you see this episode, you'll see exactly what he showed me. So thank you all for tuning in. Check out this episode. It's amazing. Episode 46. Do you believe in miracles? Do you? Hello, and welcome back to Embracing the Fight. As you can see, I have an absolutely beautiful guest on here, but I have to give you a little background, of why she's here first. Because if you've been a part of Embracing the Fight, you'll know that most of the people I bring on, I know them personally. However, I don't know her personally. However, I had some alone time with God. And I was struggling because, I've been taking my medicine, I've done the treatments and everything still isn't 100% clear. So it started making me wonder, is God still performing miracles? So we named this episode 45, Do You Believe in Miracles? But before I get into that, I'm going to let this miracle that's on the screen with me tell you who she is and a little bit about herself.
Hello, my name is Brittany Lewis. I currently reside in Texas. I'm from Louisiana. I guess I should maybe say I'm a miracle, a modern day miracle. Formerly, I was a registered nurse. I do plan to get back to that here soon. I am very deep into women's empowerment. I have a son who's 16 years old who plays for the DeSoto High School, which is the #1 school in Texas. So that keeps me pretty busy right now.
Okay.
I don't really know what else. I'm just me.
Okay. So I have a question for you. You said minding your own business a week ago. You get a message out of the blue saying, "Will you be on my podcast?" What made you say yes? What made you, agree to it?
So I don't think you even know this about me. My everyday prayer is, God, what can I do to spread your light on the earth?
Amen.
So when you messaged me and said, hey, I want you to tell your story, I never turned down an opportunity to tell my story. Whether it's in a grocery store, at a football game, wherever we are, I'm going to stop to take the time and tell my story.
So look at that. God was talking to you and me at the same time. So he was telling me about your miracle, and you were agreeing to tell me about the miracle that's going on in your life. So everybody who's listening, she is about to tell you a story that, oh my God, it's not even a story, it's a testimony, a testament to God's goodness, to his love, to his faithfulness. And I've seen people that have dealt with the illness that she's dealing with now that didn't make it. They didn't make it past a month. Some not even a few days after they were diagnosed. However, she's going to tell you what point she's at right now, how long this has been going on, what she was told. She's going to give you everything about her diagnosis. So, y'all, just take a moment to listen to this amazing modern day miracle testimony.
All right, so I guess I should start. We'll go back to like February. It was February 22nd, 2022. I had just got back to Texas from a travel assignment. Like I said, I was a travel nurse. Came home, I took my son to school. That evening, when I got up, my son was calling me to pick him up, but I did not recognize who my son was. This is from my son. Of course, I don't remember this. So he kept saying, like, Mom, come get me, come pick me up. This is Byron, this is your son. And I kept saying, who are you? I don't know you. How did you get my number? As we're on the phone. So eventually my son found a way home from school, and he had his key and came into the house, and he found me in the bed. I had a seizure. So he helped me up to the restroom. We ended up going to the local hospital. My son and my partner at the time took me to the local hospital. I was kind of in and out of like orientation. They could tell me my name, they could tell me who I was, and I would remember. But if I just had to recollect on my own, I was unable to say those things. At that first hospital, they asked me about my history. Had I been having headaches, anything going wrong? And of course, my answer is no. I just got back from working travel assignments. I've worked in New York for COVID. I've worked in California, like assignment after assignment. Nothing physically wrong with me. So we leave. We're about to leave that hospital, and because they tell me we have to transfer you. And I asked them why, and they said, well, you have a brain tumor on the front right side of your brain. Did you know that? I said, no, I had no idea. So I get transferred to a higher level of care. At that facility, we have to wait a few days to have surgery because they're still trying to figure some things out. I'm in and out again. Some things I remember from that. I remember visitors. I remember my family, but I also remember at night calling my son and my family asking, why would you leave me here? I would never leave y'all here. Why am I alone? Somebody come get me. So eventually, fast forward, we get to March 1st. It's time for a brain surgery. I've had all these family members. I've had all this prayer. I've had friends, to die that were younger than me. So that thought did cross my mind, but then I had to go and speak words against those thoughts. So as we're going into surgery, my pastors from Louisiana drive up, they come and see me, they pray over me. I FaceTime all of my family together on one big group chat, and we're ready for surgery. I go into surgery, I'm ready. We have the surgery. The surgery was successful. I recover in the hospital. I have to stay in the hospital a few days. So I stayed in the hospital a few days, and eventually I started noticing all these differences with myself. My speech, I'm weak. I can't walk independently. I can't remember things. And it was just like a steady decline. I'm familiar with brain surgeries because my mom had a brain surgery, and I helped my mom recover from that brain surgery. So in my head, I'm 30 years younger than my mom. I'm gonna have this surgery. I'll stay in the hospital a few days. I'll get out, recover. I'll be fine. I'll go back to my normal self. Well, that was not the plan for my life. After a few days, it was maybe like day 5, like March 5th. I wanted to go home. They asked me, could I stay in the hospital longer? I'm like, no, I want to go home. I don't want to be here. I want to go home.
Right.
And so they're like, well, we can't release you to home. You have to go to a rehab. And so in my head as a nurse, I work labor and delivery. I know what rehab is, but I'm just like, okay, that's for like older people. Why do I need rehab? And they're like, well, you need all of these therapies. You can't do anything for yourself, so you're going to go to rehab. that was like the shock of my life.
I have a question. So
Hmm.
when having a nursing background and they come in and they tell
Hmm.
you that all of these things are happening, but your mind is still sharp, at this point, because it almost
Hmm.
sounds like you're hearing it, but you're not receiving it because you're like, look, no, I don't need therapy, I don't need this, I don't need that, just get me
Right.
out of here. What was that like, for you to actually be the patient this time and not the person giving
Hmm.
the care?
I felt honestly like completely trapped inside my body.
Mm-hmm.
Because I could speak, but I had like a speech impediment. I
Mm-hmm.
would stutter. My thoughts, everything was completely delayed and slow. So some things that they would say, like when nurses come into the room overnight and say certain things,
Mm-hmm.
I could remember and I could associate it with things, but I couldn't express it out of my mouth. So it was very, very frustrating for me. It was kind of like a helpless, hopeless moment. I would write things down on paper to remember. My son would write my name on the board to help me remember, this is your name, mom. This is the date.
Mm-hmm.
You are going home on this day. I had to, or, my family had to reprogram everybody's phone numbers in
Mm-hmm.
my phone again with a picture.
Okay.
All of my friends that would reach out to me during this process, they would say, hey, Brittany, let's say this is Erica. And
Mm-hmm.
I would probably be like, Erica, who?
Mm-hmm.
Send me a picture of you. And so
Okay.
they'll send me a picture, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I do remember you.
Okay.
So it was just this like hill and valley type experience. But as far as like my nursing knowledge, it never really went anywhere. Like
Okay.
I knew what they were saying to me.
Okay, that's good. All right. So
Yeah.
now you're at the point where they're telling you, what the course of action will be. They're talking about the physical therapy and the speech therapy and all this. So at what point did they tell you, what was going on, or at what point did you ask what the actual diagnosis was? Because I know you said you were already, thinking that it was more like, what your mom had, because
Hmm.
you had seen that you cared for her and you figured, okay, well, maybe I got, the same kind of thing going on. At what point did
Right.
you realize that my diagnosis is different? This is what I have and this is what I have to deal with.
So my mom had a meningioma, which is a non-cancerous tumor.
Okay.
Um, And so once I got through rehab, I stayed in rehab like 10 days. And so it's the day of my discharge from rehab. I'm excited. They do this whole announcement over the PA system. Your family comes, the nurses, kind of like a hero's walk.
Okay.
And I packed up all of my stuff. My family came, cleared out my room. And when I got to the end of the threshold to my room, I looked at my doctor at physical therapy and I said, well, was this a meningioma? And
Mm-hmm.
she stopped and she looked at me and she said, no, I'm sorry. Your tumor came back as glioblastoma.
Oh, wow.
And so at the time, everybody else is already outside of my room, excited, ready to cheer me on. So all I can do in this moment is like feel it. It was kind of like a hit in my chest. And I just looked at her and I said, I know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, yes, but you'll be okay. And so I go on out, the hero walk. My son is waiting for me, my cousin, all of the nurses, everyone who I bonded with, like other patients.
Mm-hmm.
They all like, bye, Brittany, cheering me on. We leave the rehab.
Yeah.
And I saw my brain surgeon at the end of the doorway. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember telling him that I was going to walk. So when I saw him, I said, you remember, I told you I was going to walk out of here. And so
Mm-hmm.
I got out of my wheelchair and I walked out. And he was like, you did tell me that. I was like, yeah, I told you I'm going to walk out of here.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up walking out physically, looking happy, looking like I'm on the up and up, but on the inside, like dying because I have this grim diagnosis
Okay.
that I have not voiced to anyone.
Okay. And once they told you what this diagnosis was, did they tell you like the life expectancy for it?
Once I went to the doctor the following morning with my
Mm-hmm.
son, he did tell me, he said, this is glioblastoma.
Mm-hmm.
Typically there's about a year and a half, but then you could also look at like 3 to 6 months.
Mm-hmm. So what was that like for you when you had to think about your son is there with you and he's
Mm-hmm.
hearing this at the same time And you're saying to yourself, I want to see him graduate, and I want to see him, play more football. I want to see him grow up. I want to be at his wedding. I want to do, all these things. What is it like, to hear that? And what did you say to that?
So initially with the diagnosis, I'm always like, okay, let's get it person. So initially I'm like, okay, I hear you. So what's next? What do we do about this? And so I had like my moments of defeat on the inside, but I never voiced it. Once we got outside of the doctor's appointment, I asked my son, like, do you understand what's going on here? And he said, yeah, mama, I hear. I'm not worried about it. He said, I'm not worried about it at all. And so once I saw my kid, who was 15 at the time, tell me, no, he was 14 going on 15. He said, I'm not worried about it. And so I'm like, okay, well, I got to change my posture too. Okay. I don't have time to be, sad and woe is me and oh my God, I'm only 34. I don't want to die this young. I have to fix my posture too. So once my son told me, like, mama, I'm not worried about it, I'm like, okay, it's time for me to fight. That's all. I mean, fight. What are you going to do? Right. You got to fight.
You do. Okay. So what did you do exactly to fight?
So a lot of my fight was spiritual, or still is a spiritual thing. It's like everything about it is spiritual. Initially, I did not tell anyone who I thought would even feel like, oh my God, Brittany's gonna die. I sat and I thought strategically about who I would tell this diagnosis that I was given. And I did not want to tell anyone who would not pray or say the things that I was saying. So anyone who I thought would think against it at any moment or was not spiritually strong enough did not have access to my diagnosis. So mentally, I had a good friend, Sabine. She said, I want you to write down on a piece of paper everything that you want to see before you leave this earth. And so I wrote all of those things down, and I still read that list to this day. Although they say that my tumor is going to reoccur or, it's going to come back, they could have graded it improperly, whatever the case may be, I still stand on what I stand on. So spiritually, that was my biggest fight. Mentally, that's another part of it because, of course, everybody hears cancer. I call it the big C. You're automatically like crippled by fear.
Right.
So for me, it was like, how do I get this fear out of here? And how I removed the fear was I started speaking to the cancer, telling the cancer that you are trespassing in my body. You need to dry at your root. You don't belong here.
That's right.
This is my temple. You have no rights to this temple that God gave me.
That's right.
So that was my, spiritual and my mental. And once you start saying those things, ours have just as much as authority.
That's right.
The Bible tells us we can speak things. So those are my two biggest things from the beginning. Even when I was going into chemo by myself, even when I had like radiation burns on my neck, even when my body physically, I could not get up out of bed some days. Some nights I would be in bed and my son would be like, Mama, you're so hot, like physically, body on fire. And the only thing I would say is, it is well. Yes, it is Lord. Well. It is well.
Yes, Lord.
It is, I didn't care what it looked like. I didn't care what I felt like. I didn't care. I mean, and there were so many other people around me with my diagnosis who were passing away, who were, as soon as somebody hear brain cancer, they're going to say, oh, yeah, you don't survive that long. You don't live that long. Oh, people die quick from brain cancer. So that's, I don't receive any of that to date. I don't receive any of that.
Amen. So physically, you just talked about the spiritual and mental, and physically you had to take chemotherapy. But at some point, you had a conversation with God about this chemotherapy. And what did he tell you? What did he say was going to be your steps going forward for healing?
So I got to a point probably at about 9 months in, I'd say about 8 to 9 months in, where I was tired of my hair growing back and then I could touch it and it just falls out and it hurts. I was tired of, the different blemishes and sores on my skin, the steroids, all of those things that I was going through. I was absolutely tired. And to be honest with you, I had a conversation with God, like, God, if this has to be my life, I don't feel like this is what you call me to. This cannot be my life. Like, what are we doing here? I need some type of solution. This is, I'm fighting, I'm praying, I'm saying, I'm doing everything.
That's right.
I am not claiming any of this. I'm even when I'm going into chemo, I'm encouraging other people. I'm still, spreading your light. And I'm not saying you owe me anything, but if this is how it has to be, God, I don't want it. And so it was probably maybe 3 days after I had that conversation with God, and I would just continue to pray around day 3. And I just kept hearing, like, literally, no more chemo. Just like that. Like, not no more chemo. And I was like, okay, no more chemo, no more chemo. And I kept hearing it. And so it was time to refill my meds, which go through a specialty pharmacy. And I was calling to refill them. And as I was calling to refill them, they were telling me, like, no, it's going to be $24,000.
Ooh, Lord.
And I'm like, okay. Now, initially when I got them, they told me that, but then insurance came through again. It went down to like $5,000 and eventually went to where I didn't have to pay anything. Well, we got back to this $24,000 mark again. So I was like, And I was looking up things that help. Like vitamin C is something that can puncture a cell membrane and help with cancer. But when I call and ask my doctor for vitamin C infusions, insurance doesn't approve that. But you'll pay for me a $24,000 chemo bill. And so I kept hearing no more chemo, and I was like, okay, wait, it's the reason I'm not getting this medicine. And it's like the Holy Spirit just said, don't take another chemo drug. And that's what I did. I called and I said, listen, I'll take iron infusions. I'll take whatever else, all this other stuff. I don't want the steroids and I don't want the chemo. And that day, I cold turkey. They tell you, well, you have to taper off. You have to do this. You have to do that. I didn't do any of that. I cold turkey stopped chemo.
And from that point, what did it show? Like, say the next time you had a brain scan, the next time, they checked your symptoms. They want to see, how you're progressing without the chemo. What was that like?
Right. So I stayed with the same oncologist and I let her know my plan. And I asked her, like, okay, excuse me, you're telling me every 3 months we're going to scan. Every 8 to 12 weeks we're scanning and we're looking for a tumor. But I'm telling you that's not going to happen. So what do we do? Well, we just keep going until something happens. And I said, so you're telling me I'm living to die?
Right.
She said, yeah. That's usually what happens. And I said, well, can you tell me like the longest that one of your patients has lived with this type of cancer? She couldn't tell me. I knew then and there it was time for me to switch my care. So then I went to the next doctor and we kept scanning and I kept telling him, like, I'm not doing it. We got a clear scan. We got a clear scan. We got another clear scan. We made it all the way to a year with a clear scan. Okay, so textbook says at the max, you have 18 months to live with brain cancer.
Yep.
You got another scan, clear. We got another scan, clear. March 2024 will be 2 years for me. I don't take a chemo pill.
Praise God.
I have not had another piece of radiation. And every scan that I have had has been clear.
And there was something else that you were telling me while you were taking the chemo. You were saying that it was really hard for you to remember that your speech was impacted. All these things were happening because of the impact of the chemo on the healthy and the cancer brain cells.
Right.
So why do you think that was? What do you think was going on?
So the nurse in me, even after, I got the spiritual, don't take any more chemo, and I stopped and I thought, well, these chemo drugs are not smart enough to say, hey, we're just going to kill cancer cells. They kill healthy brain cells too. And this is why people with brain cancers die so quickly. You are literally giving them a medication. Yeah, you killing the cancer cells, but we're also getting a medication that is killing healthy brain cells. That's why our memory is impaired. Yes. That is why we shut down. That's why we stop eating. That's why we lose our drive. Because you are killing the healthy brain cells that I do have. Okay. Like, I feel like we are too far into medicine where there isn't anything created that can say, hey, let's just go target these cancer cells.
In the brain, especially, yes.
In the brain? I can take you, okay, if I got cancer in my hand or in my arm and you're killing, normal cells and we're targeting cancer cells, but we may have to deal with taking a few of my regular cells. My brain? That's no.
Yeah.
This is like the center of my existence. This is my central, this is the powerhouse of the body.
Right.
So that was another reason I was like, no, I'm not doing it. I started looking up healthy things. There's and I may not even be saying it right. Inside of an apricot seed is actually a poison. I don't even know how to say it. If you look it up, you'll see it's on the internal part of an apricot seed. Okay. And so it's illegal and not FDA approved here, but that's known to target cancer cells. Vitamin C, high dose vitamin C IV is good for cancer patients, but insurance won't pay for it. You have to go pay out of your pocket. Make it make sense.
Right. And you're not saying that people should just stop, chemo cold turkey. What you're saying is what works for you worked for you. This is what God told you to do, and you took those steps, and this is the result.
I'm saying I made a decision for me. It was a spiritual decision, and it involved me physically. I'm not telling anyone to stop anything. Right. I would never do that. Okay. But I would say do your research, look for holistic and healthy things. And just like, people make the statement, Jesus and therapy can work for your mental health. Natural things and medicine can work for cancer. So just do your research. Always get a second opinion and figure out what do you think works for you? For me, once I stopped chemo, I felt so much better. My memory started coming back. My skin issues, went away. And we deal with it like, hey, this is what we have to do. And these are just the side effects that you're going to have to deal with as a result of chemo. That's not the life I wanted to live.
Right.
I don't want to always be weak. I don't always want to be sad, depressed, in a dark place. Just frail. Right. Steroids blowing me up, gaining 80, 90 pounds.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
So for me, I was just like, okay, you know what? Something got to give.
Yeah.
And my got to give was stopping the chemo.
Yeah, because now you're able to go and cheer for your son and do all the things that you desire to do. And I'm just curious, the list that you wrote down of the things that you want to do before leaving this world, how many of those things have you checked off? And is that list growing?
Probably, I would say at the least 10 of those things. So one, the first two was initially when I got the diagnosis, I wanted to live to see my son's 15th birthday. My son had just gotten his passport, so I wanted to go out of the country with my son, which we did do for his 15th birthday. Okay. I wanted to see his 16th birthday, so I did see that. Okay. One of my biggest ones was I never wanted my son to have to look up in the stands at a football game and not see his mom.
Or hear you.
And so by the grace of God, this entire year, he has played 10 football games. We are now heading into game 12, which is second round of the playoffs, or maybe 11, because I think we had a bye week. But he has never looked up and not seen his mom. I have felt good at those games. I hadn't had to sit isolated because my white cell count was down. I can cheer. I can scream. I drive myself to those games. I no longer live in fear of, I'm going to have a seizure, or, my body is hurting so bad, I got to leave at halftime. My son is not constantly looking back like, Mom, are you okay? Like, all last season, he would just do a thumbs up, like, you okay? You okay? He just gets to play the game that he loves.
Yeah.
So we are constantly checking things off that we have written, that we have prayed over, and declared together and agreed with as a family.
Okay. And I want everyone to understand that you're not, back to nursing again, because even though, you don't have a tumor or anything like that anymore, you're still going through the process. You're still healing. You're still not, 100% where you can go back into such a stressful job. I want people to understand that, because just because, you might be clear doesn't mean that you are 100%, yourself again, because brain cancer is extremely serious. So that leads me into the fact that you have a podcast. And I want you to tell us, about that podcast, because I understand that's very close to you as well.
So it's on YouTube. It's Projects to the Palace, or you could look up my name, Brittany Lewis. I did stop recording. We finished up season 1, but we will be pushing out more seasons. I've just been so busy with football, and one of my things that I'm still healing from is multitasking. So we are still praying about that. I'm still in like cognitive therapy to try to get back to myself as far as multitasking and being able to handle multiple things at once.
Okay. I was gonna say, is there anything else, that you want to share about your podcast? Like, what is it, what does it really entail? I know it says Projects to the Palace. Is it about your life, or is it about, things that you've seen? I mean, what is it? What does it focus on?
So it's really dear to my heart, because when you hear like Projects to the Palace, you kind of think of going from low to high. For me, it's, you can pretty much find anything. I always say, women young and old, I'm good for your soul. So it started off with my teen pregnancy, basically just turning, like, people say lemons, taking your lemons and making lemonade. I took an unwanted teen pregnancy, became a labor nurse as a result of it. I had mental health issues myself. I had an inpatient psychiatric hospitalization after the death of a friend. I took that and I turned it into a platform to give women a safe space to talk about mental health, that you could be Black and have mental health issues. Pretty much anything that you could think that you could go through, I've pretty much taken that by the grace of God and turned it into a palace.
Okay, that is amazing. So is there anything else that you want to share about your diagnosis, or you want to say hi, shout somebody out, or anything like that before we close the podcast?
Not necessarily. I'm just honestly grateful to be alive. I'm grateful for my family, my community, those around me, my friends, everyone who loves me and who thinks like me and speaks over me and covers me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on here. You just don't know how much this episode, has blessed me, because my way of thinking, how they used to say back in the day, that stinking thinking, I was starting, to get that, because it was like I wasn't seeing what I thought I should see. But God said, no, look at this story. And once I looked at that story, it was like, man, you have nothing to complain about at all. Like, you need to step back for a second and just say thank you. So it's your story has truly, truly changed my heart. It has. And I appreciate you for coming on and being so open and so honest about everything that you've been through. And I'm going to keep checking in on you from time to time, because I want to know, how this cognitive thinking and all this therapy is going for you.
I'll be right here. I'm an open book. If you go to my Facebook, you probably think you can see my whole life.
All right. Look, I will. I'm going to check it out. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, girl, you coming back. You coming back. We're going to have you on here again.
I'll be waiting on the invite.
All right.
Don't take too long.
I won't. Believe me, I won't.
Okay.
All right. You have a good evening.
You too. Bye. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to this 46th episode of Embracing the Fight. I hope that this episode blessed you as much as it did me. And I am so glad that Brittany took the time to sit with us today and to tell us her amazing testimony. Do you have a testimony that you would like to share? Is there something that you're going through that you don't necessarily have the answer to, but you'd like to talk about it so you can encourage others? If so, reach out to me at operations@diversitydesigned.com. That's operations@diversitydesigned.com. And I would love to feature you on my show. And thanks again for tuning in to Embracing the Fight. You all have an absolutely amazing day.